Welcome to Movie Mania, where we're all crazy about movies, and today we're talking about Spiderman. That's right, we're going to be ranking every Spider-Man movie from my least favourite to my favourite in a tier list setting, because tier lists are fun. That's what we're going to be doing on this channel, a lot of tier lists, little rankings and reviews and stuff like that, and I thought, let's start with a fun one, ranking some Spiderman movies. And I do have a fond memory of most of these movies. I saw pretty much every single one at the cinema. So I've had having a nice time watching them with some popcorn and some pop. And I do have my least favourites and do have my favourites and a lot to say about each movie. So let's get started with the very first one, which is the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, the original with Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. You got Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, who, from me watching this in the cinema as a kid, this is gonna be nostalgia. But I kind of need to take my nostalgia goggles off for a bit, because the movie, it's fun. It is kind of a bit cheesy though, but I feel like that is kind of the charm of the first movies. The first three movies, in fact, there's a lot of cheese factor, but I feel like it just enhances the experience. So many great memorable quotes in these movies. The Green Goblin shooting out his sleep gas, like sleep, classic. Slapping Peter Parker on the head and just sitting down. The whole, and then the glider going straight into him at the end. So many good quotes with Green Goblin. Probably one of the best villains, which is why they brought him back in No Way Home. Love the performances all throughout. Mary Jane Watson is great in this. Perfectly casted, in my opinion. Even a cameo by Bruce Campbell. Come on, it's great. It's amazing. I loved it, and I'm kind of gonna put it in S. That's right. I think it is one of the best. The cheese makes it even better. Going back nowadays, still one of my favourites of all time. Even going for the DVD, going for all the comic book stuff they had on the extras. It's just a fun time. Great special effects even now, like the pumpkin bombs exploding people into skeletons is fun. The whole balloon top sequence is great. Everything about this movie is pretty perfect. And then came Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 somehow managed to up the ante. Some would say even more. This is probably one of the greatest sequels in cinematic history. You could say Aliens. You could say Terminator 2. I say Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is just one of the greatest sequels. But do I like it more than Spider-Man 1? This is a hard one for me. I feel like the story is better in 2. The characters more nuanced. I love Dr. Octopus. Fantastic villain because he's kind of troubled. He doesn't want to be this way. He's sad after the death of his wife, which he caused. He's struggling between being himself and then having the arms as his puppet. It's a struggling movie. It's a great movie. The sacrifice at the end kind of reminds me of like Return of the King kind of style. I do love it, and I do think it's S tier. But for me, personally, because this is a personal list for me, I like number 1 a little bit more. Both S tier, both 10 out of 10s, the best Spider-Man movies you can get. But Green Goblin, it just steals the show. And Alfred Molina is amazing as Dr. Octopus, but I prefer Green Goblin. So that's my S tier. Love both. The train scene as well, come on, iconic. Everyone sees his face, but no one says anything. Lifting him up on the train. Amazing moment. Love it. Now comes Spider-Man 3, which is a difficult one to place, because when I first watched it, I loved it. On rewatching, I didn't like it as much, but then recently I rewatched it again, and I found it quite fun. There's a lot of misses in it. Yes, Topher Grace's Venom being a big one. Kind of miscast, Eddie Brock should be... He's a photographer, but he's kind of, he's a biker and stuff. So Tom Hardy as Venom was pretty spot on. I enjoyed his take on Venom, but Topher Grace's Venom, terrible. They tried to cram too many villains into it. I liked some of them, didn't like others. Sandman was amazing. Sandman was fantastic. Hobgoblin made sense. Just have those two in. Don't need to shoehorn Venom in. Just have those two in. It would have been a fine movie, because they tried to shoehorn Venom in. It got a bit crowded, it got a bit crowded, and I didn't like it as much because of that. But there's so many iconic scenes. I mean, come on. The Peter Parker as emo Parker walking down the street dancing. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. I love stuff like that, but it's not a great movie, but I don't think it's bad, so I'm going to put it in B tier. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this, and with a drink in your hand, Spider-Man 3 is fantastic, so I'm going to defend Spider-Man 3. Fun movie throughout. Heart-wrenching moments with Sandman. I just wish the Venom part was cut out completely. Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man. This is when Spider-Man changed actors to Andrew Garfield, who I think is an amazing Spider-Man. Really cool with the quips. One of the best Spider-Men, actually. Not as good as Peter Parker. He's skateboarding and being way too cool, in my opinion. But I kind of like this movie. It wasn't amazing to blow my socks off, but it was pretty good. You know, it was in the pretty good territory. The Lizard Man, Kurt Connor, he was okay, trying to turn everyone into lizards at the end. The motivation was a bit weird. The confrontation, the CGI of him, I didn't like. I wasn't really a big fan. I like the more reptilian take, like the kind of crocodile with the shredded lab coat, like in the anime, the animated series. That's way better. So for that, I'm gonna say, I don't know where to put this one. I'm probably gonna put it in C for average. I enjoyed it, but there's a lot of parts that missed the mark. Like, Lizard Man as a whole missed the mark. Peter Parker as a whole missed the mark, but the Spider-Man parts were cool. Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I'm not gonna... I saw this at the cinema when it came out, and I hated it. I actually hated it. Like, why is Electro blue? That really confused me. I know he's blue in the comics, but it just didn't work for Jamie Foxx's character, and they improved on him tenfold in No Way Home. Do I hate it enough to put it in F? You know what, I'm going to delete F and just put it in D tier. Let's delete F. It's easily my least favourite Spider-Man movie. I walked out of it really disappointed. Him falling into a vat of eels, it was crazy. It was crazy to me. Hated his motivations. Trying to be nerd just with those thick rimmed glasses and the buck teeth, and it just came across as really cheap. Didn't like the villain at all. And then the Rhino at the end, what was that? They just shoehorned him in for like 5 seconds. It was terrible. The plot was terrible. MJ's death, cool. It was a good romance movie, I'll say. So the romance parts actually save it from being F tier. So him and Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone, fantastic. Those chemistry, great. Loved the chemistry, and I loved the her neck breaking scene. That was fantastic. So that's the reason it's not an F. So I do like some of the movie, but most of it, like the actual Spider-Man parts of it, terrible. Terrible, D tier. Next up is Homecoming, which is going to go straight to A. I really like Homecoming. The Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, is fantastic. One of the best villains in the MCU. Love his portrayal of the Vulture. The whole, he's been betrayed by Tony Stark, so he wants to show it to them, so he's got this underground kind of thing going on, and it's only because Spider-Man's getting on his nerves that he's going around being even more evil, because he's got the motivation which a lot of people kind of agree with. You know, these big corporations coming and taking your stuff, destroying half the city in the Battle of New York, and he's just trying to make a living for his family. I can agree with that. This is a villain where you kind of root for, and I was rooting for the Vulture. I was rooting for him, so villain is fantastic. Tom Holland, great Spider-Man. Great Spider-Man. He's got the right amount of charm, the right amount of charisma, and the quips to go with it. So I think he's an all-round fantastic Spider-Man. It's just the moments in it were less spectacular than these two. That's probably the only reason it's in A. I still liked it a lot. But that's probably the only reason why it's in A. Next up, I just realised the new one's not on here. Yeah, the new one's not. We'll talk about that though. Next up is Far From Home with Mysterio. I love Mysterio. He's my favourite villain. I'm going to say A tier, but it's at the bottom of A tier. I like the first one a bit more. I do like Jake Gyllenhaal, he's one of my favourite actors of all time, and I thought he did fantastic with Mysterio's role. Love the whole bait and switch, him getting the goggles or the glasses from Tom Holland was fantastic, that switch part. All the drones, the ending was amazing, where he frames him, loved it. It has some funny scenes, a lot of funny scenes on the trips, but overall I just don't think it was as memorable as Michael Keaton's Vulture. I feel like his presence, like especially the car scene between him and Peter, and they weren't even in costumes, but the energy between them in that scene was palpable. Loved it. So Homecoming gets a bit higher for me. Far From Home was good, but not as good. Next up is Into the Spider-Verse, which is S tier. It's S tier. Do I like it as much as the first two? No, because I grew up with them. But this is a fantastic movie. Like, the art style, comic book wise, amazing. Like, the art style alone elevates this. The villains are amazing. The female Dr. Octopus, Kingpin was amazing, mourning the death of his family and stuff. The motivations were there. The villains were great. I mean, his own uncle was a villain in this, and it was kind of heart-wrenching. Miles Morales, fantastic Spider-Man. Can't wait for the new one. Can't wait for it. It's coming out soon this year. Amazing movie. And last but not least, so yeah, I found another tier list with actually No Way Home on, which I'm going to put top of A. I really loved it. It's my favourite of the Tom Holland ones. I mean, the conflict between him and Doctor Strange was fun. The old villains from the Sam Raimi ones returning. Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin delivering a performance of his lifetime. Loved it to pieces. I mean, it harkened back to my favourite era of Spider-Man, and it did it tastefully. Loved it. I mean, even the same actors coming in, from Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, it was amazing. It was amazing. Top of A. Didn't quite reach the heights of 1 and 2, or even Into the Spider-Verse, but I think it's a fantastic film and one of the best of the MCU. Probably one of my favourite MCU movies of all time. So that is my Spider-Man ranking, from my least favourite, Amazing Spider-Man 2, to my favourites, which is Spider-Man 1, which is crazy. Yeah, let me know down below how you would rank these movies. What do you think of my tier list? Let me know down below, and we'll see you again, Movie Maniacs.